Well, certainly a lot of the challenges that we've been experiencing this year will continue into next year. Part of what's happening isn't just the supply side, it's the demand side. Demand is off the charts. Retail sales are through the roof. And if you think about those images of ships, for example, waiting at anchor on the West Coast, every one of those ships is full of record amounts of goods that Americans are buying because demand is up, because income is up, because the president has successfully guided this economy out of the teeth of a terrifying recession.
Right. Former South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg, that's right, the former mayor of South Bend, the highly unqualified Secretary of Transportation, offering some words of hope there on the supply crisis currently affecting the U.S. More than 250,000 containers remain dead in the water floating off the coast of California. Americans everywhere are experiencing shortages and inflation is through the roof, all with no signs of slowing down. Biden is yet to schedule any public event on the crisis, refusing to answer questions thrown at him. Former U.S. Assistant Secretary of the Treasury Monica Crowley joins me now to give her thoughts on the crisis, and our absentee transportation secretary. Monica, good to see you.
Hey, Buck, great to be with you.
So I haven't had the chance yet, and so I'm curious to just hear what your top line take is, so to speak, on the transportation secretary being away from his job for 2 months in the middle of a transportation crisis that is affecting the entire United States and much of the world.
Well, having just worked with a cabinet secretary, in my case, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin during the Trump years, I can tell you that cabinet secretaries cannot do this. This is not a commentary on parental leave or paternity leave or anything like that. This is a commentary on government jobs at the highest levels of the U.S. government. Cabinet secretaries are there, generally speaking, for a limited amount of time. It might be a year, it might be 2 years, might be the full 4 years of a presidential term. But when you sign on to that, you're understanding that there's a great deal of sacrifice that goes with that, Buck. And that means that you must work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without basic relief. And your family has to understand that that sacrifice goes into it. The taxpayers pay your salary and you're there to perform a job for your country. So the idea that Pete Buttigieg took powder for 2 months to go on paternity leave, and God bless him and his family, but you cannot do that. And then on top of that, if he were going to do that, he didn't even name an acting Secretary of Transportation to take over his responsibilities in his absence. So he didn't even do that. That would be bad absent a crisis, Buck. But we're in the middle of a major transportation crisis, not only the supply chain crisis that we're in, but also the trucker shortage. And it's all of a piece. But you've got airline workers now walking off the job, Southwest and other airlines because of the vax mandates. You have a convulsion, a perfect storm of a transportation nightmare. And the guy who's supposed to be overseeing all of this and fixing it has basically been MIA.
Transportation Secretary Buttigieg tried to assure Americans that, don't worry, it's going to get better, Monica. I wanted to let you hear what he has to say and respond to it.
What I know is that the holidays are going to be a lot better this year than they were last year, because a year ago, millions of Americans were sliding into poverty who now have jobs. And a year ago, a lot of us were gathering with loved ones over a screen.
Yeah, but the supply chain issue wasn't here a year ago. It seems like it's here now. And that's what his job is about.
Right. Right. And, the holidays are coming up, Hanukkah and Christmas, and that involves a lot of gifts. And a lot of those gifts, Buck, come from overseas. This is one of the big picture things that Donald Trump was trying to fix as president, onshoring a lot of our manufacturing. He was able to establish about 500,000 new manufacturing jobs in the U.S. He was negotiating fairer, more reciprocal trade deals with our trading partners, including China. So Trump was trying to rectify a lot of this. He only had one term, at least so far, in order to do it. So it wasn't enough time. And now you've got a president who's capitulated to the Chinese and to trading partners around the world. And now we've got this huge problem, plus a labor shortage. So even if the goods can get into the port and onshore, you don't have truckers to offload it, put it on the truck, and actually get it to you. So, Buttigieg is talking about this is going to go into next year. I have no doubt about that, unfortunately. because we don't have leadership either at the Transportation Department or in the White House.
What do you think are the biggest areas where we could say there could be improvement for this administration on trade and transportation policy as it pertains to commerce?
How long do you have, Buck? Because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But you also have to have the political will to do it. And we have seen that this president doesn't really have the political will to do much in terms of policies that would actually serve the U.S. economy, strengthen the economy, strengthen wage growth. And nor does his transportation secretary. But look, you've got to, I think you have to start with the labor market. And the fact that this administration has paid people more to stay at home than to go to work, that's contributed to the trucker shortage and the labor crisis across the board. But I think you have to really start reining in a lot of these benefits, child tax credit, the enhanced unemployment insurance went away in early September, but you have all of these other benefits from the CTC to rental insurance and rental assistance. You have all kinds of things at play that are actually making it more beneficial to stay home. So labor market is one part of the equation. I think that's critical. And then the spending is the other part of the issue, Buck. And I think if the Democrats were smart, and the only two relatively smart Democrats I see are Senators Manchin and Sinema, who are putting the brakes on this. But inflation, labor market squeeze, paying people more to stay at home than to go to work, all of these things could be softened, if not totally rectified, if you take your foot off the spending pedal, stop all of the additional spending, and then really put your mind to getting people back to work.
Monica, United States Deputy Secretary of the Treasury Wally Adeyemo has a take on this that I wanted you to hear.
Today, we face an economy that's in transition. And as part of that transition, we are seeing high prices for some of the things that people have to buy. But the reality is that the only way we're going to get to a place where we work through this transition is if everyone in America and everyone around the world gets vaccinated. That's why the president continues to be focused on the idea that we get everyone who can vaccinated.
I mean, first of all, everyone around the world getting vaccinated, that would take decades, maybe, if that ever happens, right? I mean, the fact the Biden administration says that is interesting in and of itself. But apparently all we got to do is just everyone has to get the shot, Monica, and the economy is great.
Well, like in New York State, where I'm sitting right now, Buck, about 86% of all adults in New York have had at least one shot. And yet New York is lagging behind a lot of free red states like Florida and Texas in terms of unemployment, productivity, wage growth, and so on. So it's not a question of everybody getting the shot. It's a question of government policies that are holding back this recovery. You know, the recovery started in about May of 2020, May of last year, when President Trump was still in office, and we had millions of people rejoining the workforce. And then when President Biden came into office on January 20th, Trump handed him the fastest economic recovery from any crisis on record. It was a relatively robust economic recovery. And so it's President Biden and his team and the Democrats' policies of high spending, high taxes, high regulation that's slowing this economic growth and basically having the recovery sputter.
Monica, thanks for the expertise. Good to see you.
Pleasure, Buck. Thanks.